If I Had Legs I'd Kick You is an intense psychological drama centered on a mother unraveling under the crushing weight of caregiving isolation and her own deteriorating mental state. The story follows Caroline, a therapist and mother whose life becomes increasingly chaotic as she struggles to care for her young daughter Riley, who is dealing with a serious eating disorder requiring medical intervention including a feeding tube. From the outset, the film establishes a tense emotional environment where perception control and reality blur together. Caroline is introduced in a therapy setting where her daughter describes her as stretchable, someone emotionally malleable and unpredictable compared to the rigid and distant father. This description deeply unsettles Caroline, who insists she is controlled and stable, yet her visible distress contradicts her claims. This early scene encapsulates the central conflict, Caroline's self-perception versus how others, including her child, experience her. The film continually returns to this idea that perception becomes reality, especially in emotionally fragile environments. As the narrative unfolds, Caroline's daily life becomes a relentless cycle of responsibilities and anxieties. Her daughter's condition dominates everything: food intake, medical compliance, therapy sessions, and Caroline becomes obsessed with meeting strict weight goals set by doctors. She meticulously calculates calories and monitors every bite Riley takes, believing that success or failure rests entirely on her shoulders. This pressure is compounded by the absence of her husband Charles, who is frequently away for work and emotionally detached even when present. Their phone conversations reveal a growing disconnect as he minimizes her struggles while enjoying moments of personal freedom, leaving Caroline feeling abandoned and resentful. A major turning point occurs when Caroline returns home to discover severe flooding and structural damage in their apartment, including a gaping hole in the ceiling. This physical collapse mirrors her internal breakdown. Forced to relocate to a hotel, she loses any remaining sense of stability. The hotel becomes a claustrophobic space where routines disintegrate and boundaries blur. The disruption intensifies her anxiety as she can no longer maintain control over her environment, something she desperately relies on to cope. Throughout the film, Caroline's professional identity as a therapist contrasts sharply with her inability to manage her own mental health. In her sessions with her own therapist, she oscillates between defensiveness, desperation, and vulnerability. She demands clear answers and solutions, pleading for someone to tell her what to do, yet resists any suggestion that she relinquish control. Her therapist encourages self-care and emotional awareness, but Caroline perceives this as insufficient, even dismissive, given the urgency of her daughter's condition. This dynamic highlights the limits of therapeutic language when confronted with overwhelming real-life crises. Caroline's mental state continues to deteriorate as intrusive fears and catastrophic thinking take hold. She becomes paranoid about leaving her daughter alone, even briefly imagining worst-case scenarios influenced by news stories and her own imagination. Her fear is not abstract, it feels immediate and real to her, further isolating her from others who cannot fully understand the intensity of her anxiety. She begins to lose trust in the world around her, including caregivers, systems, and even herself. In an attempt to regain some sense of normalcy or control, Caroline makes impulsive decisions such as buying a hamster for Riley despite earlier resistance. This moment initially appears hopeful, offering a distraction and a chance for joy. However, it quickly devolves into chaos when the hamster escapes in the car, causing panic and a minor accident. This sequence symbolizes Caroline's inability to manage even small variables in her life, reinforcing her fear that everything is spiraling beyond control. Her interactions with strangers at the hotel, particularly a man named Jamie, further reveal her instability. While he offers moments of distraction and connection, their exchanges are erratic and uncomfortable, reflecting Caroline's fluctuating emotional state. She oscillates between seeking connection and pushing people away, unable to maintain consistent boundaries or trust. The film also explores Caroline's relationship with time and progress. She describes life as a series of cliff goals that, once reached, reveal only another challenge rather than relief. This metaphor underscores the endless, exhausting nature of caregiving and mental illness. There is no clear resolution or endpoint, only continuation. Each day becomes something to survive rather than live. As Riley's weight goal deadline approaches, the tension intensifies. Caroline becomes increasingly frantic, trying to force progress while simultaneously fearing failure. Her daughter, sensing this pressure, becomes more resistant and emotionally fragile. Their relationship is marked by love but strained by fear, control, and mutual dependency. Riley's simple desires and fierce food preferences, wanting comfort, needing reassurance, become battlegrounds where Caroline's anxiety plays out. As events progress, Caroline's instability grows more visible and dangerous. She begins leaving Riley alone more frequently at the hotel, something she once feared intensely. One night, she accidentally locks herself out of the room while Riley is inside, leading to a moment of panic where the child must figure out how to let her back in. This reversal of roles highlights how Caroline is no longer able to function as a reliable caregiver. Her fear begins to shift into detachment and her decision-making becomes increasingly erratic. At the same time, her professional life collapses when one of her patients, another overwhelmed mother, abandons her own baby during a therapy session and disappears. Caroline is left holding the infant, unsure of what to do, exposing her inability to handle real-world crises despite being a therapist. The situation escalates when she contacts the patient's husband, who responds with frustration and denial rather than concern. This subplot mirrors Caroline's own situation, reinforcing the film's exploration of maternal breakdown and societal misunderstanding of mental health struggles. Caroline's obsession with control deepens, especially regarding her daughter's treatment. When doctors warn that Riley may not meet the required weight goals and could need more intensive care, Caroline reacts by rejecting the medical system entirely. She convinces herself that she alone knows what is best and begins withdrawing from structured treatment. Her desperation leads her to increasingly irrational choices, fueled by guilt and the belief that she must fix everything. One night, this negligence results in a frightening incident when Caroline accidentally locks herself out of the hotel room while Riley is inside alone. Panicked, she begs her daughter to open the door while the child, confused and half asleep, struggles to understand what is happening. This moment captures the reversal of roles. Riley, the vulnerable child, is forced into a position of responsibility while Caroline appears helpless and unstable. It reinforces the film's recurring theme that Caroline is no longer capable of being the stable protector she believes herself to be. Meanwhile, a parallel storyline unfolds involving one of Caroline's own therapy patients, also named Caroline, who is struggling with severe postpartum psychological distress. During a session, this patient abruptly leaves her baby behind and disappears, triggering a crisis. Caroline, in her role as a therapist, is forced to handle the abandoned infant, revealing her complete inability to manage emergencies despite her professional identity. She desperately contacts the patient's husband, who reacts with anger and detachment, blaming his wife rather than recognizing the severity of the situation. This subplot acts as a mirror to Caroline's own life, another mother overwhelmed to the point of breaking, reinforcing the idea that maternal collapse is not isolated but systemic and deeply misunderstood. Caroline's mental condition continues to deteriorate as she struggles to balance her responsibilities. She becomes obsessed with the idea that everything is her fault, particularly her daughter's illness. In group therapy sessions for parents where others are encouraged to release guilt and shame, Caroline rejects the idea entirely. She insists that if it is not the parents' fault, then they are powerless, which she finds even more terrifying. This belief traps her in a cycle of self-blame and desperation, driving her to increasingly extreme behavior. Her interactions with her own therapist become more erratic and confrontational. She demands answers, instructions, and solutions, but rejects any response that does not provide immediate control over her situation. In one revealing moment, she confesses a past abortion and expresses doubt about her identity as a mother, suggesting she may have gotten rid of the wrong one. This confession exposes her deep internal conflict. She feels fundamentally unfit for motherhood, yet is completely consumed by it. Her therapist eventually decides to terminate their sessions, recognizing that the therapeutic relationship is no longer effective. This abandonment further destabilizes Caroline, leaving her without any professional support. At the same time, Caroline becomes fixated on the physical hole in her apartment ceiling, which has remained unrepaired for months. This hole becomes a powerful symbol throughout the film, representing decay, neglect, and the unknown. When she finally returns to the apartment with Jamie, they discover that the damage is worse than expected. The space feels contaminated and alien, reinforcing Caroline's sense that her life is irreparably broken. The hole is no longer just a structural issue, it is a manifestation of her psychological state. In a desperate attempt to cope, Caroline turns to alternative methods like breath work, hoping to find relief from her anxiety. However, these sessions trigger disturbing visions and emotional breakdowns rather than healing. She experiences intense hallucinations and auditory distortions, blurring the line between reality and imagination. Her fear becomes overwhelming, particularly regarding her daughter's safety and suffering. As Riley's medical situation becomes more urgent, the pressure on Caroline reaches a breaking point. Doctors warn that Riley is not meeting the required weight goals and may need more intensive care. Instead of accepting this, Caroline begins to reject the entire medical system, convincing herself that she alone can fix her daughter. She withdraws from the treatment program, isolates herself further, and starts making dangerous decisions. The climax of the film occurs when Caroline takes the most drastic step of all: she removes Riley's feeding tube herself. This act is both symbolic and horrifying. On one level, it represents her desire to free her daughter from medical dependence and regain control. On another level, it is a reckless and potentially life-threatening decision driven by denial and desperation rather than reason. Riley, confused and still struggling with her condition, expresses both relief and fear, admitting that she is not actually better. When Charles finally returns, he is confronted with the full extent of the situation. He discovers that Riley's feeding tube has been removed, her medical care has been abandoned, and a stranger has been left to watch her. His reaction is a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. For the first time, the consequences of Caroline's actions become undeniable and visible to others. The final moments of the film are deeply unsettling. Riley, still vulnerable and not fully recovered, tries to reassure her parents that she will be better, echoing the same pressure that has been placed on her throughout the story. Caroline, meanwhile, is emotionally shattered, unable to justify or fully comprehend her actions. The film does not provide a clear resolution or redemption. Instead, it leaves the audience with a haunting image of a family on the brink, shaped by love, fear, and the devastating effects of untreated mental illness. Ultimately, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You portrays a raw and unflinching exploration of maternal breakdown. It examines how overwhelming responsibility, isolation, and internalized guilt can push a person beyond their limits. Caroline's journey is not one of recovery but of exposure, revealing the fragile line between care and control and how easily it can be crossed when someone feels they have no other choice. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.